The Miller legacy. The year was 1979, and the world had become a quiet place for Richard "Rick" Miller. For 2 long years, his wife, Anne, had been gone, leaving the home they had once dreamed of filling with the sound of children unnervingly silent. At 34, Rick spent most of his evenings at the kitchen table, staring at the same stained wallpaper and listening to the relentless tick of a clock that mocked his solitude. People in their small, suburban town of Meadow Creek told him he should remarry, move, start over. But Rick couldn't. He wanted to keep a promise he had made to Anne. Lying in a hospital bed, fragile and fading, she had whispered, "Don't let my love die with me. Give it somewhere to go." That promise, a fragile thread in the dark, led him on a rain-soaked evening to the weathered doors of St. Mary's Orphanage on the edge of town. He hadn't planned to stop. He was just a man adrift in his grief, seeking a moment of respite. But as he stepped inside, looking for a phone to call a cab, a low, collective wail of crying babies drew him down a darkened hallway. In a small, windowless room, 9 cribs were packed tightly together. Inside each one lay a baby girl, all of them of African-American descent, with wide, dark eyes and impossibly small arms reaching for comfort. They weren't crying individually. It was a chorus of shared despair, a single, agonizing lament. A young nurse saw the look on his face. "They came in together," she said quietly, "left on the church steps in the middle of the night. No note, no names, just 9 infants wrapped in the same blanket." Rick was frozen. 9. How could someone abandon 9 lives, just like that? The nurse's voice dropped to a whisper. "No one wants them. People come in looking to adopt 1, maybe 2, but not all of them. They'll have to be separated eventually." The word separated hit him at a physical blow. He thought of his wife's promise to let their love find a place to grow. He remembered how Anne had always said family wasn't about blood, but about a choice. When Rick finally spoke, his voice was a trembling whisper. "What if someone took all of them?" The nurse almost laughed. "All 9, Mr. Miller. No one can raise 9 infants. Not alone. Not without money. They'll think you're crazy." But Rick wasn't listening anymore. He walked closer to the cribs, and one of the babies, her tiny fists clenched, looked up at him with an unnerving intensity, as if she already knew him. Another reached a hand toward his sleeve, and a third grinned, her gums showing. Something in him, an empty place he had carried 4 years, suddenly found something to hold. The grief he had borne for so long was replaced by a purpose, something heavier, but profoundly alive. The battle for a family. Rick's decision to adopt all 9 girls ignited a firestorm of controversy. The legal paperwork was a war in itself. Social workers called him reckless. His own brothers called him a fool. Neighbors, whispering behind their curtains, muttered, "What's a white man doing with 9 black babies?" Some of the comments were darker, laced with racial prejudice. People warned him about the financial burden, the ridicule, the impossible upheaval of his life. But Rick was unmovable. He sold his vintage car, his tools, even some of Anne's jewelry. He picked up extra shifts at the factory, worked side jobs fixing roofs on the weekends, and took a night job bussing tables. Every dollar went to formula, diapers, and the cribs he built with his own hands. The house, once silent, was now a beautiful chaos, sleepless nights, bottles boiling on the stove, and laundry lines sagging under the weight of 9 tiny sets of clothes. He learned to braid hair with his clumsy fingers. He learned which lullabies soothed which child. He learned to count their breaths in the darkness when a fear kept him awake. And with every passing day, the whispers from the outside world grew louder. Parents at the park pulled their children closer. Strangers stared in the grocery store. One day, a man spat at Rick's feet and said, "You'll regret this." But regret never came. Instead, he found grace in the moments that stitched them together, making them more than blood. The first time all 9 of them laughed at once, a sound so pure it rattled the walls. Watching them crawl in a line across the living room and the living caravan, the comforting weight of 9 small, sleeping bodies pressed against him through a thunderstorm. They were his, and he was theirs. He knew the world would never stop questioning, never stop judging. But as he looked at the 9 girls who filled his once empty house, he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had given love a place to go. The Garden of 9, the years that followed, were a testament to Rick's unwavering commitment. Raising one child was a challenge. Raising 9 alone was a war. His hands were always calloused from extra shifts. His body ached from lifting, carrying, and chasing. But his heart, his very being, grew stronger with each passing day. Each girl became her own universe, with her own distinct spark. There was Sarah, the comedian of the house; Grace, the most tender, who would always place her small hand on her sister's shoulder during a fight; Ruth, fierce and quiet, who learned to walk first; the mischievous twins, Naomi and Esther, partners in crime, forever tiny cookie crumbs on their faces; Leah, Mary, Anna, Rachel, and little Deborah, all with their unique spirits and endless games that filled the house with life. To the outside world, they were the Miller 9. Some said the name with awe, others with suspicion. But to Rick, they were simply his daughters. The scrutiny still followed them. At school drop-offs, mothers whispered, "What's his angle? Why would a white man adopt 9 black girls?" Some accused him of using them for attention. Others questioned his motives and his sanity. Rick never responded. He just kept showing up with their bagged lunches, their braided hair, and their shoes tied tight. A man who, against all odds, saved their day every day. Money was tight, a constant struggle. He often had to stretch groceries and bought the same shirts until the fabric thinned to threads. At night, when the house finally fell quiet, he'd sit at the kitchen table, bills stacked like enemies, his head in his hands. Yet, he never let his daughters see his despair. When they looked at him, they saw strength, and that gave him strength in return. There were moments of pure, unadulterated joy that sewed them even closer than blood. Birthdays with homemade cakes, Christmas mornings when 9 pairs of hands tore open gifts wrapped in old newspapers, nights spent under the stars, all of them squeezed onto a single blanket in the backyard, listening as Rick told them stories about Anne, the mother they never knew, but who lived on in every sacrifice he made. Slowly, against all odds, the girls grew. They excelled in school, they stood by each other when the world tried to tear them down, and they always came home to Rick. Time, however, is merciless. By the late 1990s, his hair was grey, his back stooped. The girls, now young women, began to leave. College, jobs, marriages. The house that had once been rattled with noise and laughter grew quiet again. On the night his last daughter moved out, Rick sat alone on the couch, staring at a framed photo of all 9 of them as toddlers, lined up like pearls on a string. He whispered into the silence, "I kept the promise, Anne." The full circle decades passed. The girls blossomed into doctors, nurses, artists, and mothers. They built their lives, but they never drifted away. Every holiday, they returned, filling his modest home with so much life that the walls seemed to sigh with relief. And each time, Rick would sit back, eyes moist, marveling at the miracle he had been foolish and strong enough to want. Now, 46 years later, in 2025, Rick sits in his favorite armchair. The lines on his face are etched deep. His body is frail, but his eyes are still clear. Around him, 9 women, not girls, but brilliant, confident women in brightly colored dresses surround him. Their arms rest on his shoulders, their faces pressed close, their smiles blooming like flowers. Photographers click their shutters. The world watches. A headline blazes across news outlets. In 1979, he adopted 9 black girls. See them now. But Rick wasn't thinking about the cameras. He was thinking about this moment, the circle finally complete. The babies no one wanted had grown into women the world admired. And he, the man everyone doubted, had lived long enough to see it. Grace, one of his daughters, leaned in close and whispered, "Dad, you did it. You kept us all together." His lips trembled into a smile. "No," he whispered back, his voice fragile but steady. "We did it. Love did." The room fell silent as each daughter leaned in, pressing against him. 9 strong women, encasing the frail frame of the man who chose them when no one else would. And for the first time in 46 years, Rick allowed himself to cry without hiding it, because the promise he had not only kept, but it had flourished beyond his wildest dreams.